Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinema Flow podcast. I'm your host, Zack Abdulbaki, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. He's an actor, he's a writer, he's a filmmaker, he's one of LA's finest. It's Mr. Eric Toms. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you very much for having me, sir. I'm happy to be here.
Of course, thank you for making the time. I always like to start at the beginning on the show, so could you please share where you were born and raised and what your folks did for a living?
My name is Eric Toms, and I was born and raised in Northern California, in the Tri-City area in the Bay Area. There's Oakland, San Francisco, and then the least cool San Jose. And I was born in a suburb of San Jose called Sunnyvale. And one of our next door neighbors is a town called Santa Clara, and Santa Clara has gone on record for being one of the most expensive cities to live in the entire world. It was a very interesting place to grow up. Well, my mom was a lunch lady at my high school, and she worked for the school system there for 35 years. And then my dad sells mutual funds, and it took me probably the first 30 years of my life to figure out what my dad did. Like, I don't know, he went to an office and did something. I was a little confused. Uh, but growing up in the Bay Area was and is still to this day. It's a strange place to grow up because there are two types of people who grow up there. There's the sons and daughters of agricultural, so people who are working on the farms, and then there's the sons and daughters of engineers. You know, the people who are working at Apple or Lockheed Martin or Siemens or things like that, like all of, the IBM. So I grew up kind of riding my bike and playing around like the business parks where, yeah, like where the internet was built, or where IBM was creating new storage solutions. So straight, it was an interesting place to grow up because especially when I started, my performing career doing stand up, when you would get in front of a crowd, the crowd of agricultural people or the crowd of engineers, they water and oil. They would never mix. So you would kind of be telling jokes to one side of the audience or the other side of the audience. You were never going to get everybody all together.
That's really interesting. And just curious, like how exactly did you get into acting and show business? Because I know you did like the sketch comedy troupe. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I was a little kid, I always say my first stage that I ever performed on was my sisters and I would hang a curtain above the doorway to our hall, and then we would do like magic shows from our parents. And I was one of those kids from day one. It was like, oh yeah, no, this is what I'm going to do forever. And so I was in my first school play when I was in the third grade, and was like, great. Well, yeah, this feels like home. And then just did the school play every single year. And then when I got into high school, there was three guys who went to Santa Clara University, who would come and direct uh, our plays, and they happened to also perform at a vaudeville and cabaret theater in San Jose called Big Lils, Lils, Big Lils Cabaret. And so when I totally botched going to college. Like I wanted to go to UCLA, but like I was like my essay was handwritten using like pencil and paper. And my friends were like, "What are you doing? You should take this more seriously." So I ended up going to San Jose State just kind of like as a last resort. And right down the street from San Jose State was this theater, Big Lils. And I was like, well, I'll audition. And I did it, and it was bawdy women with like big cleavage, or yelling at the audience, and it was guys with like turly mustaches, and the audience was given these big bags of popcorn, and they were encouraged to throw them at the performers, to throw them at each other. They had giant steins of beer, and I absolutely fell in love with it and ended up dropping out of college because San Jose State was a perfectly good school if you wanted to go into engineering, but their creative program at that time in the late 90s, early 2000s was just pretty stagnant. There wasn't much going on. Even the student run productions were run by professors, which didn't make any sense to me. There wasn't a lot of independent film going on over there either. So I ended up just eventually shut my eyes to that and just went full force into Big Lils. And at that time, there was the .com boom, and all of the landlords were raising their prices. And so normally Big Lils was really only open on a Friday and Saturday where they would do their shows. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm sorry. And so they decided they were going to add another show on Thursday, and the goal was we were going to make this into a TV show. So it started off as a stage show, and pretty much because one, nobody knew what they were doing, and two, we were all volunteer. You could do whatever you wanted. So I immediately threw myself into writing, so because I knew, like, well, if I write sketches, then I can cast myself and I can star in the sketch. Like, great, I get more stage time. I was also one of the actors, and then also it came into we were very much stealing from the Saturday Night Live kind of playbook, where it's like, okay, we're gonna have video sketches, we'll have live sketches, we'll have comedians, we'll have a guest band that comes on. So we had a house band that would perform, we would bring in guest bands, and the video production side, again, nobody knew what they were doing, so I was like, okay, well, I'll spearhead that. And so I became the video producer, and I had to very quickly come up with, what are the contact sheets for everybody? What are all the props that we're going to need? When are we going to schedule this to do all of these things? Because at first it was just us getting together really early on a Saturday or Sunday morning. Most of us were hungover and just kind of spitballing ideas. I was like, this is such an incredible waste of time. We need to have a plan going into these things, which any good producer, that's the job of the producer. It's like, we need a plan. If you just get a bunch of creatives in a room, eventually you'll get something. But they really need a focus. They need to know where are we going? What are we going to do? What resources do we have? So we did that for a handful of years, and then we ended up getting a contract to perform first at a local channel, and then a bit more of a wider one for a affiliate called UPN that has since gone the way of the dodo. But in doing all of that, we had comedians that would come on every week, and so I got to know all of the comics. I would sit backstage and talk with them. And when the show ended, this sounds so cliche, but when the show ended, it was literally the sort of thing like, we had a show on a Friday, we ended on a Saturday, and that was it. We never did it again. And I felt this big creative hole in my chest, and I needed something to go right away. And one of the great things about stand-up comedy is you don't have to really wait on anyone. You can write a joke today and get on stage tonight and perform. So a lot of the local comics were so incredibly nice to me. I think back guys like Kenny Kane and Andrew Norelli and Steve Maison and Gary Cannon and Tony Diamco. These were guys who took the time, who would sit down with me and be like, okay, here's how you get into comedy. And you're going to build your set, and you're going to go to these open mics. And it's a good idea for you to start an open mic so you can meet everybody. And you're always constantly traveling. You're always getting to the mic. And then eventually, there's a guy named Jimmy Goings who would book one-nighters around, and you were trying to get into the clubs, you were trying to get into Cobb's, or you're trying to get into the Punchline. And I got very, very lucky, because in downtown San Jose, when I was only 8 months into doing stand-up, the Improv opened up a brand new theater. It sat 550. So it was the biggest comedy club in the Bay Area by far. And huge names were coming in. And because I was doing this TV show at the time, I was able to, the executive producer guy named Darren was able to kind of get me in the front door. And I was the first local comic to hit that stage. Before then, they had brought everyone up from Los Angeles. And so as a result, over the handful of years that I was there, I was able to work. I opened for Kevin Pollak twice. I opened for Lewis Black. I opened for Norm Macdonald. Incredible amount of comedians that I'm just so thankful for, because I had no right being there. I could do in my first set when I opened for Kevin Pollak, they only had me do 5 minutes up front, which is just ridiculous. Like 5 minutes is nothing. But I was so incredibly thankful, and I had moments very early on. Oh man, I still get chills thinking about this. Dana Carvey, who was a huge performer on SNL and I grew up idolizing, came to the club. just to hang out, just kind of check it out because he lived in Northern California. And there was a night after a show where in the green room, it's me, Dana Carvey, Kevin Pollak, and then one of their buddies from back in the day just shooting the breeze, just being comics, hanging out and talking about whatever, whatever comedy was happening the day. And it was like I was sitting there in this room trying, Zach, trying to act cool. And in my head, I'm just screaming, like, oh my God, this is happening. Uh, so I ended up I became a touring comic. I did that for 5 years. Moved down here to Southern California, and eventually I got a job. My wife and I got a place, and it became very clear that my stand-up career was not as lucrative as any of us wanted it to be. And it was hard because when you do stand up, they're really the only place you make money is on the road. And I had just gotten married and I didn't want to spend weeks on end away from my wife. And I was going to the clubs at the time, and it was just, it takes a long time to get onto the improv stage. It takes a long time to get up at the Comedy Store. And I had to get a job as a web designer for a company called Breast Implants 411.com, and it was a breast implant advertisement site. And it was the most Los Angeles job that you could get. That's just about the apex, man. But some of those guys I still know to this day. They're still some of my best friends. And the guy who was my manager at that job is a guy named Ryan Turry. I literally texted him just before we got on this call. Like, we're going to hang out later tonight. Great guys. And out of the blue, not out of the blue, but there's a show called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And it's the only time I have been ahead of the curve when it comes to cool things. And I watched this show the first season. I was telling people, like, have you heard of this show? It's called Sunny in Philadelphia. Like, it's fucking amazing. It's a really good show. And they had a contest because those guys had filmed a 5 minute short in order to get their show on the air. So Fox was doing, or FX was doing this contest where you filmed a 5 minute short and you put it on their website, and then people would vote for it, and you would get a contract to possibly do your own show. And so I filmed my 5 minute short. It didn't go. And to really give you to eke out my age, I put on MySpace Comedy, and it was on my MySpace account. And I was, flash forward, I think 2 years later, I'm sitting at my desk at Breast Implants 411 and designing a site. And I get this email out of nowhere asking me if I would like to audition for this Fox show that was a comedy clip show called Reality Binge. And I was like, is this spam? Is this like, are they fishing right now? And so I responded and said, yeah, okay. And they said, great, come in, this Friday afternoon. And I asked my boss, could I have Friday off? And he said, yeah, sure. And I went in, and it was one of the only times I've gotten into an audition, and I just crushed it. Like, from start to finish, the time that I walked in the door, I absolutely did very, very well. And so I got the pilot, and we shot the pilot. And then we had to, it was between us and I think 5 other pilots that were going to fill this particular slot. And our production was kind of the favorite going forward because it was kind of like young and fast and like hip. And we had to go meet with the president of Fox and have this lunch. And again, did very well. I was, you have to be charming and you have to be funny and you have to be witty, and did all that stuff. And we got the show. The show went to series, and this was in 2008, and we did 2 seasons of it back to back. So it was only 6 months. And because it was 2008, that was the year of the financial crisis, and we were more of a satellite channel. We weren't the 20th Century Fox. We were Fox Reality Channel, so which is this kind of experiment, and the whole channel went under, and so we all lost our jobs. And I had luckily gotten some kind of powerful representation, but because I only had this one show under my belt, they didn't really know what to do with me, and they tried to get me attached to a lot of game shows, and I'm not a game show host. That's not really my forte. They're like, oh, he's a comic and he's a funny guy, and he hosted this show, but it was just me in front of a green screen, throwing to clips. So they kind of didn't know what to do with me. So after about a year, they dropped me, and then my wife got pregnant, and then we started having babies, and uh, but all the while I was still trying to make something of my career, and I was trying to get a hold of independent filmmakers. And so I did a couple of very bad indie films that I think I got $500 for here and there. But the focus was more like, okay, I guess I just got to be a good dad right now. Like, I can't screw up the kids. Like, those have to be a priority. And I'm so thankful that I did do that and not run off, because I have fantastic kids now, and they're great.
Absolutely. That's good to know your priorities. Um, And it's funny is that like I think in the 2000s there was kind of a pipeline from comedians to hosting like game show or reality binge or anything like that. I think now it's more comedians to podcasters. And
Hmm.
you produce a podcast, Making Movies is Hard. Why did you decide to produce that show instead of this show?
You know what? If I'd met you back then, maybe I would have. So in Los Angeles, this is the advice that I always give to anybody, because I've been here now for over 20 years, and LA um, is a place where it's very easy to get lost. There are so many times you talk to independent filmmakers, and they're like, "Yeah, I really want to direct narrative films." But right now, I'm just editing for influencers, or I'm editing for a reality show. And you talk to them 5 years later, and you're like, well, what have you done? And they're still editing for influencers, or they're doing something that's adjacent. They're in the business, but they're not doing the thing that they really set out to do. And that was, I felt like me for a long time. I was just grasping at straws. Like, whatever job you had, I was willing to take. And having the kids and having my wife really grounded me. And I realized I need to absolutely focus on what it is that I really want to do. And if I want to be an actor, if I want to be a writer, if I want to be a filmmaker, like, those are the things that I want. Those are crafts, and you get better at your craft the more you do them. And also, there are so many disciplines to that craft. You need to learn about all of them. And also, from I feel like the 20 years that I've been in the entertainment industry, because technology has shifted so much every single year, you are constantly recalibrating and trying to figure out, wait, no, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. And for a long time, I remember when YouTube first started, everybody in a position of some sort of influence would give you new marching orders every year. Oh, you should be doing a lot of YouTube videos. Oh, you should be getting a lot of Facebook friends. Oh, you should be doing Instagram shorts. Oh, you should be doing TikTok. Oh, you should be starting a podcast. And each one of those things are very simple to tell somebody, but it takes an incredible amount of work, and a lot of times there's a lot of financial setup as well, because it's just, yeah, you should go make a bunch of short films. Are you buying a camera? Do you have to buy a laptop? Or you're learning to do all these things. And so by doing Making Movies is Hard, it was an education. I knew that every week I would have to QC the show. So they would record, our hosts, Ulrich and Liz, do a fantastic job hosting the show. I would have to listen. So every week I have the opportunity to listen to these filmmakers tell their story about how they made their films, where they got their financing from, what they did in order to get distribution. So that was me learning, and also inspiring me, because you would hear very well-to-do people who would talk about their budgets being in the millions of dollars. You'd also listen to other people that who had maybe a couple $100 to shoot their movie, but they did it. And so you finally realize, like, when it comes to the world of indie film, you can do whatever you want. If you can make it, you can make it. You don't have to wait for people to give you the green light. And we luckily we talked this morning. We started this whole segment talking about the Oscars, and there are some really interesting things happening. If you're gonna do F1, you need $30 million to pay Brad Pitt just to leave the house. Like, that's an insane amount of money. And I think when you're talking about that kind of money, you are really hampered or really stymied, because it's like those people want their money back. If you're an independent film, you can talk about more nuanced things. You can talk about things that are a little bit more crazy, a little bit more off the wall, a little bit more fringe because you're doing it for a lot less money. And those are the places that I think really excite me. So that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to start. I wanted to learn how these people got their movies made. I wanted to learn like what is it from soup to nuts? How do you really make a movie and get it out there? What's both the business side and the creative side?
That's amazing. And I think you do have a good sense of both the business and the creative side. And you're also very versatile and you're not just an actor. You do lots of different things. Like I was looking on your website and read about My Dad's Kid, which is the play
Mm.
that you did at Beverly Hills Playhouse last fall with Nancy Kellum, who went to the same film school as me, Chapman.
Yeah.
And for the audience, if I may just read the log line. When down and out novelist Greg gets a surprise visit from his estranged half sister Pam, a successful corporate lawyer, the family secrets, sibling rivalry, and truth about their mysterious father come out in this hilarious and heartwarming debut play from Eric Toms. So, wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about this and what the experience was like doing this show.
Sure. So when you have kids, when your kids are, in elementary school and younger, it's a full-time job. You can't leave them alone. You're going to go pick them up from school. You're dropping them off. You're helping them with their homework. As soon as your kids hit middle school, you get a lot more autonomy. Like my kids ride their bikes to school every day and they ride home and they're good kids. They do their homework. And of course, we check in and make sure, but you have a lot more time. Right when both of my kids got into middle school, I realized, like, okay, great. I was able to do things in fits and starts beforehand. I was able to do productions as long as I had control over the production schedule, or I was able to write whenever I wanted, and then I could send those scripts out. When it came to acting, I realized, like, in order for me to really, I was still auditioning things, but I needed to hone more of my craft when it came to acting. I was a very talented comedic actor, but dramatic, I think I needed a lot more schooling. So I looked around at different acting schools, and I came across the Beverly Hills Playhouse. I liked them for a number of reasons. They offered a lot to their students. They were also close. There was lots of parking. That was a great one as well. And their emphasis was more on theater. And theater is the actor's medium. And so I was in class there for probably about a year and a half in their advanced acting class. And I'd had this idea for the longest time because when I was in my early 20s, the woman that I dated right before I started dating my now wife was a woman who, and this was very prevalent, being a kid of the 80s and 90s. That was the heyday for divorce. That my parents were divorced, my wife's parents were divorced. Everyone I know who grew up in that time, your parents got divorced at some point, and people would go on to start second families. The girlfriend I was dating at the time, she was a product of a divorce. Her parents got together at a very young age. They were emotionally immature. They weren't very financially secure. And as a result, they didn't give a lot of attention to their kids. And there was a lot of dysfunction. Her parents then divorced, and her mom started another family. And she was more emotionally mature. She was more financially grounded. So as a result, her kids were very beautiful and successful. I would go hang out with my girlfriend with these new siblings of hers, these half siblings, and they all got along very, very well. It was a very cohesive family experience. But I always noted that the woman that I was dating, there was a little tinge of bitterness. There's a little animosity that was unspoken. It was this question of why didn't I get the good parents? And that stuck with me for a long time. And then also myself being a parent, I recognized that prior to having kids, I was a completely different man than I am now because there is much more empathy. There is much more. I'm a man now. I was much more a boy beforehand. I was able to kind of chase wild dreams, and I was a little trash bag kind of floating in the wind. Whereas now I am a very grounded, stable person. And I liked the idea of exploring what it meant to be a parent, what it meant to be a person, and also I'm a sucker for a happy ending when it comes to plays. I'm a Paul Simon guy. I want things to end in a sweet place. So I liked the idea of telling the story of these two siblings who don't know each other very well, who strangely they were raised by the same man, but he was at different points in his life. And so I invented this character, Greg, who was living in Los Angeles in a studio apartment. He'd had one hit when he was a younger man and then had writer's block ever since. And this woman who comes to see him is half sister. She's this other end of the spectrum. He's a creative. She's very much analytical. She's a corporate lawyer, worked at an insanely high level in New York. Through her actions kind of imploding her life in New York, she's now trying to reinvent herself in Los Angeles. And her dad tells her, you should go stay with your brother for a little while and get to know him. And so I wrote the first 10 pages of this. The idea was I was going to just put this up myself at a fringe festival here in Hollywood. And I put up the first 10 pages, and we performed them at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And the guy who owns the Playhouse really encouraged me. He said, I think you got something here. You should keep writing. So I wrote the next 10 pages, and we put them up with Nancy, playing my sister. And at the end of that second performance, he said, do you want to do this here? And I said, hell yeah, I do, because it's going to save me a lot of money, and I think it'll be much better. So he also came on, the Alan Barton, the guy who runs the Playhouse, came on as the dramaturge and then as the director. And I was able to sit down with him. It was the first time I've ever written a play like this. I wrote it in 10-page increments. So the first 10 pages was their introduction. The next 10 pages was the difference in their work style and where they grew up. She's New York, he's LA. The next one was their relationships. He was divorced. She's never really had a real relationship. The next one was their father. And the next, so go on and so on and so forth. So I was able to write these in these 10-page increments. And then Alan and I were able to go through and iron them all out. And that was a fantastic and such an educational thing, because writing for television, as you know, or for film, you have to cut so close to the bone. Every single line has to be informed the character. It has to inform moving the plot forward. With plays, you get much more of a chance to breathe. It gets to be more of a conversation between these two people. And so that's what Alan really inspired me to do, is just like, let's just have these characters, just sit with them for a while. Like, let it get messy. Let's go ahead and make a mess and then see if we can clean it up later on. So from start to finish, it was an absolute incredible experience. I had such a great time. I learned so much. And then working with Nancy, any filmmakers who are out there or casting directors, please hire Aunt Nancy Kellum. She is absolutely terrific. And then even the rehearsal process and through the production as well. There was no bumps in the road. You were kind of waiting for then something terrible happened. But no, working with Alan was great. Working with Nancy was great. Working at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. For my first play, forget about it. It was just about as good as it gets. And it was such an interesting opportunity for me to really, when you're doing a feature, it takes so much work to get to a finish line. When you're doing a play, it's fascinating because after the first performance, we realized we're running kind of long. And we were able to, in real time, before the next performance, go through and make cuts and make changes. And so depending on when you saw the play in your first performance and when you saw the play in the last performance, it was a markedly different play. And so that, as an actor, to jump through those new hoops, because there would be times on stage, I'm talking, I'm like, wait, am I supposed to, what version of the play are we in right now? Is this version 4 or are we in version 15? Oh shit, I better find my place. But luckily, working with Nancy, I knew that I had a safety net. So if I was going to make a mistake, she was going to catch me, and vice versa. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and so much growth as far as being an artist goes.
That's amazing. I would love to read it or experience it if you guys put it back on someday.
Well,
It sounds great.
yeah, I'm happy to send it over to you. We filmed it,
Oh, oh, better.
knowing a lot of filmmakers. I was able to bring in a fantastic guy by the name of Neil Watson, who's shown at the Night of Shorts Night a bunch of times. And we brought in 3 cameras. And Neil, to bring this back to earlier, is a camera operator on Avatar. So yes.
Wait,
So he
wait,
brought
wait.
in.
You're
Yep.
telling me that there were cameras in Avatar?
I
Okay.
am sorry to break this to you, Zach, but there is not really a planet filled with blue people. Yeah, so him, and he brought in a buddy of his who was also a camera op on Avatar. So the same guys who shot Avatar shot my play. I'm currently editing that right now, so I'll have that available. And then actually, I want to do the play again because the play ended up, when we finished it, ended up clocking in at about 2 hours and 30 minutes. Which
Wow.
still, even for me, I thought was a little too long. And my wife, bless her heart, was still like, I feel like there was one argument too many. You probably could. And there was times on stage, I'm delivering a line. I'm like, we could probably cut this. This is fine. So I want to do it again and cut it way back to maybe an hour 30. And then, which I think is too short, and then perform it again at, I think it should live at around an hour 45, 2 hours. But again, to go back to what I was talking about before. It's, this is a craft. It's a living document. It's a thing that I'm kind of, it's a sculpture that I'm still kind of chipping away at. And then eventually I would like to get to the point where we do it as a feature film. So that's a ways down the road because I want to get this into a place that I think it's in its best shape.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to see the filmed version so I can see the performances and then see it in person again, and then you guys do it as a feature. That'd be amazing. I feel like plays make good movies more than books sometimes because you look at like
Hmm.
August Osage County or
Oh.
Humans or Fences or any of the
Hmm.
August Wilson adaptations. Like I love plays becoming movies. It makes sense. It's like about the same 2 hours. You're not having to shrink like an 8 hour book or like a thick book into a movie. It'd be great.
Yeah, it is really tough to crawl into someone's brain like the way you can with a book, as opposed to taking performances on stage and then having translate that to screen.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, I was looking at your website and I noticed all of the fantastic photos as well as all of the photography on your Instagram. Can you tell me how did you get into photography and what's this hobby been like?
I've always been into photography. I've always thought it was such an incredible medium, and I was very fortunate when I was a little kid. I think I was, gosh, 12, 13 when I really got my first DSLR. It was a film DSLR, a Vivitar, which I don't even know if they make them anymore. And it's always been a hobby of mine. And to slowly kind of I've always been very creatively curious. And it's one thing to take pictures out on the street. It's another thing to take pictures with studio lights. It's another thing to take pictures, kind of using trick photography, using a split Doppler or, any one of like the number of kind of tricks that you can. And so recently, just yesterday, literally, I did an underwater shoot for the second time. And that was such a learning curve as well. It's like to work with a model and to work with a person, to how they move their body and then how the light is going to catch them in certain ways. It's a medium that I'm constantly surprised and in awe, and that the second you think you have it all figured out, somebody introduces you to a new photographer. Because we start off with a lot of street photography, going back all the way to like, Bresson, in France. The beautiful things that you can see from those images, the black and whites and what he caught. But then you can go into the more surrealist storytelling, and I think of a guy like Greg Crutzen, who I'm a big fan of his work, and the scale in which he shoots, and then how people can get so intimate with their pictures. And I think about someone like Nan Gold and the shots that she did in the 70s and 80s of documenting people who would otherwise be swept under the rug, or who are considered the less favorable of society. She was really shining a light on those people and telling those stories. And Diane Arbus did a very similar thing as well. I feel like she was the Humans of New York before there was Humans of New York. So I am constantly just trying to, much like everything else in my life, trying to be a better photographer, trying to learn about my craft. And that is one of the more fun things that I love to do. The problem that I always run into is I have such creative ADD, and there's only so many hours in the day. I go through a cycle, and I was talking about this with my model from yesterday. We went to go have a bite to eat afterwards, and she's a fantastic model. And we have a similar thing where it's like we say yes to everything and we get 1,000 projects. And then eventually we're almost buried under all of the work that we have to do because photography is great. But you take, it's a second to click a photo and then it's 8 hours that you're in, for post to cleaning it up or, getting the lighting right or putting it through filters to change it all. So now I'm in this point where I have to stop saying yes creatively to things, and I got to get stuff off of my plate if I want to move forward for new creative endeavors moving in 2026.
Yeah, no, I can imagine life is very busy with all of these different things. And I'm going to put a link to your website and your Instagram and everything in the description so people can go check out the photography. And I think you have like people can buy some printouts of it, if I'm not mistaken, on
Yeah,
Redbubble.
you can. I still think the shop on my website needs a little bit more work, but absolutely, you can buy some of the prints that I have, and I'm happy to make them and send them over to you.
Yes, and I also want to get into the reason that we met, which is Night of Shorts Night, where you were kind enough to screen one of my short films, Helium. I was wondering if you could tell the audience about Night of Shorts Night and how it got started.
So the Night of Shorts Night is a free short film showcase that takes place the first Tuesday of every month at the Formosa Cafe in West Hollywood. It is completely free for filmmakers to submit their work. It is completely free for audience members to come and watch. It is meant to be a community event where writers can meet actors, can meet directors, can meet producers. Uh, I really enjoy film festivals. They can be prohibitively expensive, especially if you're at the point in your career where you're making short films. You probably don't have a lot of resources. It's very, very lean. And a lot of times I'm a middle-aged guy. I'm 46. I have the money now to fly off to the Cleveland Film Festival. If I've submit something and I'm lucky enough for them to screen it, I get to meet those filmmakers. And a lot of times you meet these people in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. And where are you from? Los Angeles. I already live in Los Angeles. We didn't have to go to Fort Lauderdale in order for us to meet. So I always felt there should be a place. I think of 24-year-old Eric who first came to Los Angeles. I would have loved to find a place that didn't cost a lot of money where I just met people who were passionate about making things because that's all I ever want to do is just make stuff. And so about 9 years ago, I had finished a short film and a couple of guys who I'd been friends with for a few years named the Cadelia brothers, James and David Cadelia. One is a cinematographer, James is a cinematographer, and Dave is a writer director. At the time, they were really special effects guys, and they're still very talented at that stuff, who have worked on the Mission Impossible franchise. Yeah, exactly. And also Star Wars as well. They're like, yeah, no joke. These guys are incredible at what they do. I'd finished a short, they had a short, and Dave had said almost as a joke, "Hey, we should find a bar and screen this someplace." And I thought to myself, well, I'll put 20% effort into this. And so at the time, 9 years ago, I put on Facebook and said, "Hey, does anybody know a bar around Los Angeles where we can screen a short?" And somebody wrote back and said, "There's this place called the Sandlot, and it's on Melrose, and you should show it there." And so I contacted them, and I talked to the manager, and the manager said, "Sure, you have to burn everything onto a DVD, though. That's the computer that we have, but we have a projector outside, and we were going to do it on a Monday because being a stand-up comic." Whenever you started an open mic, you would always have to do it on an off night. You never wanted to do it on a Friday or Saturday in a bar because that's their busiest night. They don't want, a comedian or something like that up there. They got tons of people coming in drinking. So you do it on their slow nights, Mondays or Tuesdays, because then they're thankful for any audience to come in. So that was my thought process as well. Okay, great. Let's do this on a Monday when the bar is dead. And I'll bring in, a bunch of friends. We'll bring in like 20 people. And then we opened it up to our friends and said, "Do you have any shorts that you want to show? Like, go ahead and, we'll burn them onto DVD and bring them on out." So the wife and I, we got a babysitter and we show up to the Sandlot and the doors are locked and the lights are off and nobody is answering the phone. We don't know what happened to this day. The place ended up closing. They must have closed without telling us. And now our friends are starting to arrive and I've got no venue. And my wife, luckily, is a very hot blonde lady. And one of our friends, Allison Ball, is a very hot redhead lady. And they said, this plays into the story. I'm not just bragging. They said, let's find another place on Melrose where we screen the shorts. And honestly, I was kind of at my wit's end. I was in kind of a cranky mood. And I said, fine, you guys go ahead and find another bar that's willing to screen our short films. Zach, not 2 minutes later, I get a call from my wife. Said, "Yeah, we found a place." And it just goes to show you, if you send out some hot women to go find a place to screen short films, you'll find something. And
Pretty privileged.
pretty privileged, exactly, exactly. And so they found this bar called the Parlor, which unfortunately did not survive the pandemic. But the GM there said, "Yeah, we'll open up this side bar." And they had a DVD player that screened, and so we showed all of our friends' work, and we made the bar some money. And so the GM came up to me and said, "Do you want to do this again?" And I asked James, I was like, "Do you want to keep doing this?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm in." I said, "Great, okay." And so we made that's when the Night of Shorts Night was born. But we had kind of a few tenets. One, we would never make any money off of this. It would always be free for the filmmakers. It would always be free for the audience. There would be a level of entry. It couldn't just be anybody. I was going to go ahead and do the screening process, and I would, just based on my level of taste or the filmmaker or whatever it happened to be, I'm the one who decides if people make it in or not. We also knew it was always going to be kind of small. We never wanted this to be in, a stadium, or we never wanted this to be too big. This is meant to be a small, intimate gathering. There also had to be a bar very close by in the same space because I like to drink, and I think that social lubrication is always a good thing when it comes to meeting strangers. I always make it a real point to be a good host and try to introduce filmmakers to other filmmakers, because when we talk about networking, which is the thing that most filmmakers absolutely hate, but it is mandatory for us to do. Most networking events is just a big room, and you put a sticker on your shirt that says your name, and they say, "Good, go meet people. Go ahead." And you have to just walk up to someone cold and just say, "Hello, my name is Zach. My name is Eric. I am a filmmaker. What do you do?" And it's just your job to then bounce around from person to person. And I absolutely hated that. So for the Night of Shorts Night, there really are two portions to it. The opening is I come out and I introduce the show. We screen the short. I then, beforehand, have gotten answers to a questionnaire. I will read those questions. And the reason I do it this way is, if you've ever been to a short film screening or showcase, what they do is they line all of the filmmakers up, and they hand you a microphone, and they say, "Please introduce yourself and your short and what you did." And then it goes down the line, and that's 15 minutes right there. And there's always invariably somebody who talks for 5 of those minutes, and they won't pass the mic on. And it was like, we can't do this. I just tell me we're going to spend 2 minutes introducing this person. There they are right there. Go meet them afterwards, and then we'll get on to the next thing. And then I thought, as kind of a fun side portion of this, we started doing trivia, and we would give away silly prizes. Most of the prizes, as I always say at the top of the show, are not very good. They're stuff I find in my garage. They're things that people have donated. A lot of times they're DVDs, which very few people, unless you're a real cinephile, have a DVD player anymore. So we do that. But then the second portion of the night is just us hanging out and people getting to know one another and having a good time, and me grabbing somebody by the hand and being like, "You got to meet this person because I watched your short and I watched your short. I think you two will get along really well." And so as a result, we've been doing it now 9 years. And once we started at the Parlor, then once the pandemic started, we went online, and it became a screen reading series. So then I would have people from all over the world. We had a woman who would uh, log in from London, England, every single show. It was 3 in the morning in London when we were doing the show, and she would be there. But we would have people from New York, we would have people from Canada, a lot of people here from LA. And then once we came out of the pandemic, we got very lucky that a friend of mine found the parlor and discovered that they had spent the time during the pandemic to revamp the whole upstairs bar area. They'd included a projector and a screen. She said, "Oh, well, I know a guy who does a screening of short films." So we started there, and they have been nothing but wonderful to us the entire time. They're absolutely great. And I encourage filmmakers, submit your stuff. The only thing that we ask is it be around 10 minutes and that the filmmaker be present the night of the screening. But it is the sort of place that I would have absolutely loved to have found when I was 24, first coming to Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm 25, so I'm very glad that I'm here for it. And
Good.
it's like I took two friends, Cynthia and Ben, to watch the show and to come with me, and they both said because that this was probably their favorite film festival adjacent thing that they've been to, because I've taken them to see some of my shorts, and it's always nice. There's a theater and you watch the movies, you get up, you leave, a little bit of networking, but I feel like with this it was such a like fun show. It was like the Golden Globes, like we were sitting at a little table, and also the fact that you don't charge. I mean, you're a better man than I am. I at this point I'd be like, come on, guys, $10 to get in the door. Um,
It's interesting. I think that somebody else came up with the name for this, but it's called micro cinema, and micro
yeah,
cinema has been popping up more and more in LA, and also I think in larger cities. But it is a new venue, a new idea that we're not no longer going to large multiplexes. We're going to people's backyards. We're going to small bars or smaller venues. And if I can give a quick shout out to places like Hot 30 or Secret Movie Club, or Show Your Work or Smile and Take Your Medicine, or Silver Lake Shorts, like these are all like these smaller venues that do things monthly. Some of them charge, some of them have like fantastic venues. Uh, but I think this is the sort of thing that goes into um, the same thought process of Night of Shorts Night, whereas these are places meant to help independent filmmakers hone their skills. For a long time, there was development money in the entertainment industry, and there was mentors, and there was programs that you could go, and there still kind of are, but by and large, the studios have just decided in the internet age, look, young filmmaker, you go spend your own time, put together your own resources, and get better on your own. And then once you're great at what you do, then come back to us, and then maybe we can film something together. So I think now the one of the double-edged swords that a lot of filmmakers who are your age are faced with is, yeah, you have all these resources, but it is also up to you to learn how to use your camera, to learn how to edit, to learn how distribution works, to learn how to promote yourself. You have to be your own PR firm. You have to do all of these things on your own, making many times no money. You're working 4 or 5 different jobs just to do this thing, to get better at what it is you love to do, in the hopes that maybe one day you will get to work for a studio, you get to work for some production company. And I think what Night of Shorts Night really does is we provide an opportunity for a live audience. We are a live audience who you get to test your stuff, which is both wonderful and scary at the same time, because the and TikToks and Instagram reels of our generation are great in that you get to share your work with the entire world. You don't get the live in person experience. And that is where you learn that joke did not work. This part is too long. This needs to be cut down. That character doesn't make sense. My story has plot holes in it. And that's what you do the second, you edit, in editing, you edit something over and over and over again, and you're like, it's perfect. I've checked it all. And then the second somebody's head is over your shoulder and you're watching it again, you're like, what the fuck oh my God, what did I do? And that's what Night of Shorts Night really is, a conduit for people to get their, to sharpen the edge that is their craft.
That's amazing. And it's true, like, it's funny because in this day and age, everyone has access to the internet, so you can put your movie up there. It doesn't mean people are going to watch it, but with all of
Yeah.
the places you've mentioned, like Secret Movie Club and all the places I've screened this short at, like if you add up the number of people who've watched my short, it's more than every other short I've done combined. And I think the key that I would advise people is like make your short like 10 minutes or less, because my previous shorts were longer, and it's tough to get into places like this because there's a limit. Like you have to show like you can't show 10 30-minute shorts, otherwise the screening would be like 10 hours long, so
It's
or
just too
5 hours.
long.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think a lot of times too, there is this thought like, well, we make our short, but we make it the same length of a TV show, and then maybe they'll just pick it up and put it on TV. That 99% of the time, that's not going to happen. It's going to be like it's your business card. You're going to give this to somebody. Here's what I make. Here's what I do. And 10 minutes is a pretty darn good length.
Yeah, well, I know that when I do my next short, first place I want to screen it at is at Night of Shorts Night, because it's the best place in
Yeah.
town.
Thanks,
Um,
buddy.
of course. And I just want to say to the folks at home, please make sure to follow Eric on social media. His links will all be included in the description, as well as your website. And if you live in Los Angeles and you have a short film, be sure to submit it to Night of Shorts Night. You never know, might get selected. And Eric, anything you want to say to the folks at home before we sign out?
There's a thing that I say at the end of Night of Shorts Night that I think that young filmmakers just don't hear enough of, which is your art is important. Whatever it is you're making, if you're passionate enough to put pen to paper, to open up your laptop and start typing, to get a group of friends together, to get a group of technicians together, to edit your piece, like that's important. Please keep making the stuff that you're making. There is, especially in Los Angeles, there is this hierarchy where the studio movies are at the top, where you're spending $200 million, and then below that are these, maybe indie prestige dramas and and all the way down, and you realize it's all nonsense. That is not true. That is not the real hierarchy. That is not the thing that everyone is shooting for. What you should be shooting for is your story. Your story is an important story to tell. And also, if you tell your first story, don't expect to, have somebody buy it, or don't expect money to be the end goal. Don't make that the most important thing for you. Connecting with another person, that is the most important thing. And your stories are important. You're important. Please keep making them. Please keep doing them. And best of luck to everyone out there.
I think LA could use a lot more people like you. I think that's a great thing to say. You remind me of Guillermo del Toro because he always is championing other artists and other filmmakers, and I think that's super inspiring, and I appreciate it as one of the Night of Shorts Night alumni.
Dear Guillermo, I'm sorry I could not remember your name for the first hour of this podcast. I do apologize. I'm a big fan of your work, and I do agree with Zach. You were fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Cinema Flow podcast. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and rate us 5 stars. We'll be back next week with more fun movie chats. But until then, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.